Welcome, everybody. Here is another episode of Make Up Your Life with your host, me, Devon. Today, we have another amazing guest. So excited to introduce her, Eryn Krueger Mekash. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And thank you for getting up so early because it's like 8 a.m. over in your neck of the woods, right?
Yes, but that's a pretty late time for makeup artists, usually in film and television. They're usually at work around 4:30 or 5 in the morning. So they would have already been at work for a while. So I'm happy to get up and get my day started. I'm actually working on something right now that I go in a little bit later. So this is perfect.
Yeah, that's great. So a little bit about Eryn Krueger Mekash, for those of you who have not heard of her, which is almost impossible, but we'll assume that not maybe everyone has. She has over 33 years of television and film experience as a makeup artist and is diversified in beauty, makeup effects, and design. She is a member of IATSE, also the PGA, which is Producers Guild Award winner. She started her career in Los Angeles. Were you born and raised in Los Angeles?
Yes, I'm fourth generation Southern Californian. And yes, and my niece is the fifth, which is pretty cool. And then my whole family's from California, and I still love living here very much.
Love that.
Yeah.
Eryn has won 8 Emmys, 7 for makeup and 1 for producing, 10 Artisan Awards, as well as 34 Emmy nominations for outstanding makeup, prosthetic, and non-prosthetic.
Yes.
And a big part of your career, which we'll talk about a little later, was connecting with Ryan Murphy, who created hit shows like Nip Tuck, Glee, American Horror Story. And so you worked with him for almost 17 years, right?
Yes.
Almost all his projects?
Yes, we've been together for a long time. And started on Nip Tuck. My friend James Mackinnon was the department head. He had done the pilot and wanted somebody to come on and be the at that time was called the key position, which is the second in command. And he called me, and he's a good friend of mine, and he was going to be leaving to go do another show and wanted to turn it over to somebody responsible. And I guess that was me. And Ryan and I just kind of hit it off. We're about the same age. He's a couple of years older than me, but still in the same, generation. And we have the very, very similar likes and references, and we just got each other really well. So we hit it off. And from there, we just started doing all the projects together, and he would have me leave shows sometimes a little bit early to go start another show. And that turned into me leaving to go do Glee. And then I was on Glee for a couple seasons, and he said, I have a new project that is right up your alley, called American Horror Story. And I thought, oh, that's definitely up my alley. I have a huge love of monsters and makeup effects, and I always have, almost my whole life since I can remember. And that was the beginning of. I had been nominated a couple times for Nip Tuck, which was absolutely. I still remember the first time I was nominated. I was just so blown away, and it was an amazing experience to be nominated for an award that your peers are giving you. It's just really awesome. And then I won my first one for a project I did with Ryan called The Normal Heart, which was about the AIDS crisis. It was a play, it was a book and a play, and then they made it into a film, and that was on HBO, and I won for best makeup for that, and along with my husband. And it was a really amazing experience, and I've won quite a few since then, and I'm just still so honored to be recognized by my peers. It really is just a huge thing. I don't know if it could ever get old, but I started out with it being makeup being a love and a passion and a love and a hobby. And I didn't know, of course, at the time with, no technology then, it's like rotary dial phones and 4 channels on the television. I didn't know that that could be a career. I didn't even know that there was makeup schools. I didn't know there were very few makeup schools, and I don't think I could have afforded to have gone to one anyways if somebody had mentioned it. But in high school, I took a lot of art classes. I just wasn't sure how I was going to get to do makeup, but I just drew and when I went to college, I just went to a local college. I ended up getting accepted at Cal Lutheran, and I ended up not going because I got a job in the film business, and I was so excited. I said, I'm just going to take a semester off. And my parents were like, okay, well, we support you. And I ended up not going back. I went back additionally to do some more college after that, but um, I I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I made every move to be able to work in the film business.
So tell me when the love started. Like, sometimes there's a pivotal moment in our lives, whether it be at 5 years old or 10 years old or 18 years old, where you just were really attracted to the whole essence of creation and transformation.
I can remember two specific ages. One was when I was 7. Before that, my parents had always been my parents and grandparents were always obsessed with Halloween parties and dressing up and all that. So I grew up in that genre, that vibe, that whole thing. And my dad bought us a Frankenstein's monster mask when I was really little. I mean, I think I was 5, and he wore it. He was really tall, and he wore it for my Halloween party. And I just remember being so fascinated by my mom had drawn scars on his wrists. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like just the whole concept of becoming somebody else was just so fascinating to me. So, there was a lot of there. I think all of it is circumstantial, and a lot of it has to do with the timing that I grew up in the 70s, and that there was a lot of horror films on television, and a lot of the film, like the horror film fests were on Saturday. Watched all those. My brother was really into monsters, so I was exposed to it more than maybe other girls would have been. So I can remember, like, around 7, my mom gave me a little makeup kit, and I would do like I did like I didn't do like a clown makeup, but I did like a zombie makeup of myself. And I remember just being really blown away by it. I mean, obviously it was just a little bit of like dark circles and white face and stuff, but I was just so intrigued with it. And then I spent most of my childhood in the hospital. I had kidney problems. I had 15 surgeries by the time I was, I think, 14 or something.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was very sick, and I spent a lot of time fantasizing about all kinds of stuff, like getting out of the hospital, escaping the hospital, and how I was going to get to. I was in at UCLA Medical Center here in Los Angeles, and I just kept thinking, if I could just get to Westwood, to like that McDonald's, I could call my mom and she could come get me. Like, I would be very fantastical in my mind. So I really loved fantasy, sci-fi. I mean, if the Harry Potter books had been around when I was little, I would have been dressing head to toe like, one of the kids from the school. I was just I
Yeah.
loved witches and goblins and monsters, everything. I had books about it. My parents just knew exactly what to get me. So when I was 14, I was in high school, and 1982 was the first year I was in high school. And that was a pivotal year of horror and stop motion and all kinds of stuff. So it was like American Werewolf in London came out in 81, but it was showing with a double feature of The Thing at the drive-in when I was a freshman in high school. I saw that. Thriller came out the next year.
Oh my gosh.
Poltergeist came out in 82. Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 81. There was this 2 or 3 year period that was just saturated. And I was kind of like with Stranger Things, because all the kids have watched Stranger Things. I kind of lived that bike lifestyle where you got on your bike and you went places. And my parents let me like go to the theater when I was during the summer, ride my bike to the theater for like $1. I could see a movie. It sounds so antiquated now, and it kind of sounds like my parents' story, but it actually happened in the 80s, and you just rode your bikes everywhere. So we would just do little movies. It just was a whole saturated situation with my brother and his friends and us, and we just would do whatever we wanted and had a great time. So 14 was the next big year that I was really just, VHS was just starting, MTV was just starting. So Thriller came out, and that was just an absolutely worldwide experience. And they were showing behind the scenes, and I was like, oh, I don't know why I didn't think that was a job, but this is a story that goes on and on and on with everybody that's my age or maybe even a little bit older, is I didn't know it was a job. I mean, there is no internet at this time, it's like you're writing letters to people and to get information.
Yeah.
Or if you get a phone number, it was terrifying to call somebody. But I ended up going to, all through school, it kind of kept coming back to makeup. I danced, for like 15 years. And I would always like, okay, we're going to do a tribute to Michael Jackson. We're doing the Thriller one. Like I would do the zombie makeup on us and make the costumes and everything. So it kind of just kept coming back to that. And when I got into college, I was taking art classes and I was like, I don't know where this is going. So I was working at a ski shop and somebody brought in a flyer to Sandra Berman's Hollywood Film School, and they were offering a special makeup effects course. Now, this was just completely one of those random things that I happened to be working that night, and the guy happened to come in and hand me the flyer. So I brought it home to my parents. I'm like, this is it. I want to go to this. Please, can I go to this? And they're like, yes. So I was like a 4-week course, or I can't remember now if it was 8 weeks or 4 weeks. It was on the weekends. And I took that course, and she passed away last December, and she was a lifelong friend and helped me to kind of guide me in the right direction, got me numbers of places, because there was no Google then. She got me places, makeup effects shops. I went and applied over a summer. And as I started my sophomore year of college, I ended up getting a call from John Beekler that said, do you want to come in, be like a runner and start helping out in the makeup effects shop? And my parents very supportively let me go do it. And so I was driving from where I grew up in Agora to North Hollywood. I had never driven like maybe 2 miles past my own home. So this was like a huge adventure as an 18-year-old. Cause I was just, my first year, I was a little bit younger than everybody. So I was, just going to be 19. And so, I started there, and he started letting me do little things because I had this tiny bit of experience from this makeup effects school that I went to. I kind of knew a little bit about products. I knew a little bit about how to do things, but he kind of let me do it. So I got to sculpt, run foam, make molds, and I stayed in the makeup effects shops and kind of worked my way around. I worked for Stan Winston. I worked for Rick Baker. I worked for Bart Mixon. I worked for Rick Lazzarini, and I kind of just worked my way around and until I was doing a lot of mold making. That was pretty much my full-time job, and doing a little bit of finishing work. And at one point I decided that I really, really wanted to be on set, and I really wasn't going in that direction, staying in the shop. So I had to kind of back up, take another path. And I said that I would do work in makeup effects shops and do finishing work, which was like hair work, seaming, and painting, because I wanted that. I knew that would benefit my application, doing prosthetic application. And eventually I managed to get a job over at ABC, working on General Hospital, and they let me do all their prosthetics. I was like 22 at the time. And
oh my gosh, what were the prosthetics like on General
there was
Hospital?
a lot of like reveal things like, aha, it's Robert Scorpio, that kind of thing. So, and I was literally like going off of book knowledge. Like I ended up applying and getting into Dick Smith's advanced makeup course. So a lot of my stuff and everything was out of book back then. Like I took that makeup effects course from Sandy, but a lot of it was reading and practicing on my leg or on a friend or whatever. So I kind of was like, oh, I can do that. So I would just do it. And I've researched and practiced, of course, but I just had I had good confidence, and I wasn't afraid to try things. And my boss, Donna Messina, who has also since passed away, she was very confident. I think they didn't want to do it. They like to do the beauty stuff, and they did, bruises and stuff, but she would always be there for me. So I had this kind of amazing person that was helping me do these prosthetics, but I was learning so much just by doing it and by having the confidence to say, yes, I'll do it. Like I've heard that over and over again about my young self from mentors of saying, oh, you'd always just say yes. So I have a friend that would say, you always say yes and then say, why did I say yes? And I always say no and say, I should have said yes. And that's the difference between getting the opportunity or making the phone call, or putting yourself in a situation that might be uncomfortable, but you can do it. You just have to be confident enough to do it. So that was kind of, I think, what propelled me. And I really wanted to get in the union. It was because of that kidney issue. There was a gap point where I wasn't on my parents' insurance anymore, and I was having to pay for insurance. And it was, at the time, my God, it was so expensive. It's still expensive now, but
Yeah, it was
it was like,
unreasonable
I
then.
mean, for somebody that was making a very small amount of money and having to pay rent and a very small car payment, feed myself, and then have an insurance, it was like $250 a month. And in 1991 or whatever it was, I just could barely do it. So I was like, the only way this is going to work for me is if I get in the union. So I took a day class through UCLA Extension and Michael Westmore, and he taught a full day of out of kit stuff, how to do beards and bruises and broken noses and mustaches. And I mean, on and on and on. And I learned so much in that 10-hour day. And I went up to him and I showed him my book and I said, I make molds, and I would love to come work for you. And he said, as soon as you get in the union, you can come work for me. And I said, okay. So it was like almost just about 2 years later, I got in the union from working on General Hospital. I got all my days through the non-union way, which was at the time 50 days a year for 3 years. I called him up and I started on Star Trek the next day. He like totally kept his word and brought me in, and he's one of my mentors. And I have many mentors, but he was one of my really big ones, because he said, if you come in and you can do makeup in the morning and you can go over to the shop and do molds in the afternoon, I'll get you all of your insurance hours, because you have to get a huge amount right off the bat. And
Okay.
so you have to get 600 or something, I think it is, right off the bat in order to qualify. And I said yes. And it turned out later, when I was reading his book, which is fantastic, it's Makeup Man, I think it's called. He was given that same opportunity through his apprentice work. And so here he was paying it back to me. And I just never forget that. I think it's just the most wonderful thing. And every time I see him, I tell him how much I appreciated him doing that. But he didn't just do that for me. He did that for everybody. He was just, I looked up to him as far as how he could run 3 or 4 different shows at the same time at Paramount doing Star Trek. And I learned that I can handle a lot more than just doing one show, which led me to, overseeing quite a few of Ryan Murphy's shows as a little further down the line. But I saw him as the example. So he's still an amazing human.
It never ceases to amaze me, the kind of support that every time I interview somebody from Hollywood, that is really integrated into so many feature films and famous films and even not so famous, the support for one another, and how really every time somebody shares with me, what kind of launched their career, it was almost always because of the support of another makeup
Yes.
artist, which I feel like in any other industry in America, um, things are very cutthroat sometimes. And I always thought the makeup industry was cutthroat. I mean, definitely for, my experience, and not definitely in Hollywood or any kind of film or commercial work. That was not what I did, but it was very cutthroat. So I love the camaraderie and the the stories that just show so much connection between one another, which is really what I always thought the opposite.
Well, to be honest with you, it is.
It's just a fantasy.
No, it's not a fantasy. It's just that the people that have given me opportunities have a lot of times with makeup artists, because they're so passionate and they want it so much, they've put themselves in a situation to stand out from other people. So I'm going to hire the person that calls me and says, here's my resume. Here's what I've done. I'd love to come in and just meet with you. The person that puts themselves out there are the people that end up getting the job or getting the help that they need. No one's going to hand you a job. No one's going to say, you say, I really love doing makeup, but I'm just going to, not going to contact anybody. No one's handing you anything in life. No one's handing you anything. So when I worked so hard to get the job at ABC. I called every single week. I called every single station, ABC, CBS, NBC, every single week, and asked them if I could come interview. And they always told me no. So it took me, I think it was almost a year before ended up getting a job over at General Hospital. And I just piecemealed that job. I had like 1 day a week I would work, and then they'd give me 2 days. So as much as looking back on my career and saying like, oh, this happened for me, it's because I put myself in those situations. I put myself out there, and I did anything and everything for anybody that asked me. I didn't sit back. I wasn't, I tried not to have my feelings hurt when my feelings were hurt. I tried not to be overly sensitive. I've been treated really badly in this business too, but there were times working in makeup effects shops. I was the only girl, and I was the only woman in makeup effects, and it could be incredibly challenging to work in makeup effects shops. And it's one of the reasons why I ended up getting out too, is that it was just too much. I was learning a lot, but I was starting to get kind of pigeonholed into doing molds. So the reason that people are successful and the reason that people get to do what they want to do is because they want it and because they love it. I still love it. I ended up my hobby ended up turning into my career. And that was because I truly loved it. And because I wanted to learn, and I might not have been the most number one talented person that was out there, but I was the most enthusiastic. So enthusiasm,
Sure.
I always say, it's 10% talent, 90% enthusiasm. And it really goes a long way to, I know my craft. I know my history. I know about makeup, all the makeup artists that have come before me that have laid the ground for me to be able to walk upon. I know everything about it. I'm passionate about every single aspect of my business, and I still love it. And I still, as somebody that is 52 and been doing this for 34 years, oh my God. And it goes by in a flash, I remember the day I started in this business. I remember everything about that. I mean, there's times that I'm happy to forget too, that were incredibly hard, but people remember the good parts. They don't remember, they're not going to talk to you about how horrible it was, because it's in the business. You miss birthday parties, you miss anniversaries, you miss your children's functions, you miss so many things in this business because it is long and hard, but it's incredibly rewarding. So, I was raising my ex-husband's son from the time he was 1 until I guess he was about 12 or so. And I took a different job. I took a job on sitcoms in order to have more time with him. And, that at that time, everybody else was doing tons of film work and doing all these big, huge films. And I was doing television, doing sitcoms, which I loved. But I made that decision consciously so that I could be there for him and his mother. So it was, there are aspects of the business that you're giving up certain things, but they're also led to lifelong friendships with people, from doing Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Everybody Loves Raymond. I just ran into a camera operator that I worked with on that show years ago. And, you develop little families within the projects that you work on. And sometimes you have to learn how to get in and make friends really quickly, because maybe the project's only like 3 or 4 months long. So, but you end up having these really great relationships with people, and it's an incredibly rewarding business. You just have to have a kind of thick skin.
Yeah, well, for sure. I definitely know that. So, were there any pivotal moments? And I know you've mentioned a few, but that really were life changing as far as your career? I know Ryan Murphy is definitely one. Are there any others that you didn't share?
Well, I met my friend Tanya McComas, who's a very talented makeup artist. I met her years ago in the 90s, and I ended up doing quite a few Clint Eastwood movies with her, worked with Jamie Lee Curtis quite a few times with her. That was a pivotal moment. She's still a really good friend of mine. I worked on a movie. I ended up getting recommended for a movie called Alpha Dog that Nick Cassavetes directed. And it was a ton of tattoos and makeup effects and all kinds of fun stuff on it. And I ended up meeting my husband on that. And that was one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. I did a film last year called Hillbilly Elegy, and that was an incredible situation that I had three women, that the producer, the hairdresser, and the department head of hair, and then Kate Visco, who does Amy Adams. She couldn't do the project, so the three of them asked me to do it last year, and I made the move to do it because Ron Howard directed it, and he's one of my all-time favorite people. I love his career. I love everything about him. So I was like, it was an opportunity I couldn't miss. So there's been so many pivotal moments. There's been a lot of moments that, although they weren't necessarily the highlights, but I learned so much from maybe even some bad moments, and made me realize that I need to take care of myself, and things that I probably shouldn't have been working as hard as I was, and maybe my health suffered a little bit. There's moments like that too. So it's all learning. It's all learning and a journey, all of it.
Yeah. You have such a fascinating journey. I could talk to you all day, but I'll be mindful of your time. So you mentioned a lot of
Mm-hmm.
amazing mentors in your life. Is there anyone else that maybe was even more of an influencer, or really impacted your life, that, and maybe it's not even somebody that knows that they're this person for you? Is there anybody that you didn't mention that were
Well,
pretty
I mean,
significant?
everyone always says that works in makeup effects, or that works in any type of, uh, it's mostly men, but there's a lot more women now doing makeup and having these same people that they look up to. But Rick Baker was a big influence in my life. V. Neal, who was like one of the very first women that was doing makeup. And she's a friend of mine now, which is incredible. I feel incredibly lucky to know her. And they both were doing projects that I was just completely fascinated with. So those two people, obviously Michael Westmore was a huge one. I had, the only person that I knew that was in the film business was my parents' best friend's husband, who was a very famous music editor. He worked for Jerry Goldsmith. He's also since passed away, but he was like an uncle, and he was always very encouraging to me. He just always said, working in the makeup effects shops. Had done a lot of horror films, and he said, it's going to be a tough road, and I think you'd be better off, in a design capacity or a department head capacity where you could do anything you wanted. And I kind of, I had that in the back of my head, and I ultimately ended up acting on that. So his name was Kenny Hall. So he was a big influence, but I'm influenced by a lot of people. I'm influenced, my early influences obviously were Rick Baker and V. Neal. My husband's pointing at himself saying, "I'm your influence right now." Just so you know, he's pointing at himself.
And share with our audience who your
His
husband
name is
is.
Mike Mekash, and he is an incredibly talented artist. It blows me away. He's always making me a better person as far as art goes and makeup goes. And he's an amazing, not only a prosthetic artist and design person, graphic artist, but he's a very talented beauty makeup artist as well. And I met him on that film Alpha Dog, and we've been together for 16 years. And he's incredibly funny, and we've been together a long time, and we still have a lot of fun together. he has a lot
That's
of
awesome.
Emmys himself. So he's
And do you work
we
on the
usually,
same
yeah, we
project
do. We work
sometimes, or?
usually the last couple of years we haven't worked together that much, but we usually work at least on American Horror Story together, which is he did it last year. He was the department head on it though. I was doing Hillbilly Elegy, and I started a show called Hollywood that was out earlier this year. So Ryan had me over on Hollywood, so he was department head on American Horror Story, and so that was the only season that I oversaw it, but I didn't actually do makeup on 1984. But we're going to be going back to do this season, which hopefully will start in the next month or so. We'll see. So we're all kind of waiting.
Yeah, are you both? Are you working right
I'm
now or
helping. I
not
just
since
started
COVID?
working, so been out of work for about 7 months, and which is the biggest break I've ever had in my entire career. I think the other break I had was probably 2 months when I had some back surgery. But he just started back at work. I'm working with a friend who runs the Jimmy Kimmel Live, and so I'm helping her out over there. And I've been teaching. I taught 2 classes. I taught a last weekend. I taught a class for Stan Winston Studios for Stan Winston School of Character Arts, I should say, a safety class, and mentioned, sanitation conversation, and showed the bag of all the goodies that I got, and talked about how important it is to take that
Nice.
class. Um, and I taught on Sunday also for Rhonda O'Neill's new school called Beyond the Combs, which is here in Los Angeles, that she just opened in the past few months, actually. So Mike and I taught an injury class on Sunday, but we've had a couple days here and a couple days there. Mike was the key makeup artist on Lady Gaga's 911 video, and we did that. Was that in August, Mike? I think. Yeah. So we did that. He hired me and our regular team of people, Kim Ayers and Sylvie Knight, to come and do that with him. And we did that in full PPE gear out in like 107-degree weather. It was insane. But we got a good feeling about how it is to work in all the gear. And that went really well. So we've just had a couple little gigs here and there, but for the most part, we've been off this whole time. We've been doing a lot of work around our house. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone, right? That's great. So, yeah, we did hear that you were teaching a little bit. And in fact, off recording today, I'll have to chat with you about some ideas that we had about that, because we were like, oh, we didn't
I
know she's
Once in a
teaching.
while I am.
That's
Yeah, I do
really
it once in a
awesome.
while, and it's really hard. So I don't know how teachers are doing it, and I can only imagine how it is for parents right now being part of all of their children's Zoom classes and everything. It's hard to just do one day. My dad teaches. He's still working. I don't even know how he's doing it, but he teaches business classes. He's a professor at a business college, and he's 77. He's still teaching. I don't know, he's crazy. But that's like the hardest job. Teaching is really hard.
It is, but it's so rewarding at the same time. I don't teach anymore here at the academy, but I definitely did for many years. And it is challenging sometimes. There are
Hmm.
people that are not
Hmm.
teachable, absolutely. Um, but I think when you connect with that student and really make a difference in their life, and support their dreams and give them all the skills needed to move forward, it's so rewarding. It's more rewarding than
Oh,
any
that's
makeup
great.
I've ever done in my life. So yeah, I think it's a different dynamic for sure. So this is so much great content. I love it. I'm
Oh,
so thankful
absolutely.
that you're sharing all this. When do you feel like, and I know that some of my guests have said, I don't think I've gotten there yet, but when did you feel like you finally reached success? For some people, it's money. For some people, it's accolades. Sometimes it's their resume. It's who they've worked with. In your mind, when did you finally say, wow? And I feel as a creative, sometimes we don't ever give ourselves credit, because we really are
Right.
constantly improving what we're doing. So, we almost don't see or feel the success because we don't let ourselves. So with all those precursors, is there a point where you said, this is success? I have made a living and sustained my lifestyle based on what it is I love to do. Was there a moment in
I
your
mean, I
life
think
where
it
you
was,
felt that way?
I don't even know if I could call it success, but I was paying my bills. That was like that was huge for me, was paying my bills. I think maybe when I got in the union, I felt very successful, that I had accomplished something that I'd really, really wanted to do. Um, I felt, there's been some accomplishments that I've been really proud of, even ones that are outside of the film business. I struggled my whole life with math, and I ended up taking a math class after I got in the film business, and I got a B, which with a tutor. I mean, that was like a huge accomplishment still for me. um, but I think it was paying bills. I mean, I think it was right at the beginning. I made such little money when I first started. I think I was making $100 a week, and I was living at home and driving. So it was, but then once when I was able to move out on my own, and I moved out when I was 19, and I was paying my bills, and I wasn't didn't have to depend on my parents or to give me any money. I think that was a huge feeling of success. Um, and,
Sure.
later on when I think it was, awards are wonderful. I don't necessarily think that they're the end all, or that they should be actually the pinnacle or the thing to be working towards. I don't think it should be like, I want to win an award. I think it's more, you should be happy with working on projects that sustain you and that fulfill you. Um, so
Sure.
I think a lot of it too is
Absolutely.
the longevity. My career is still going. I think that feels very good to me. I still have so much that I want to do, and so much that I want to achieve. Yeah,
That was my next
I'd
question.
like to
What
do
does the
more
future
film work.
hold for you?
I've always enjoyed doing film. Film was my original project. I ended up, taking television because, because I wanted to be more available for my stepson. And I loved it. It was really a fun show. The Sabrina the Teenage Witch was probably one of my other big, huge stepping stones for me, because I was a department head on a show that was actually paying real money, and I was running a department with like makeup effects and beauty, and it was a really fun group of people. It was like the same crew for all 7 seasons. It's still one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on, and I really loved the people and loved the work. Um, and so that was another one that was a big deal, that I was able to, you know, raise my stepson, have a life.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because I feel like our listeners would want to know. Film
Yeah.
obviously is very different from television. So when you say I'm able to raise my stepson, what did that
Yeah.
mean? The
Well,
hours, the
you're in
commitment?
town, your schedule's very set. Like with sitcom work, sometimes you don't even have to work on a Monday. You're getting paid to like stand by on a Tuesday. Say you're shooting on Tuesdays. You come in at 11 and you're usually done by 7. So it's a very small amount of time that you are actually having to be at work. Sitcoms are perfect for parents. They have you're getting paid maybe 3 days of the week. If you have 2 sitcoms, you're golden. You can do, you have a much more flexible schedule as far as how much time you're actually at work and being able to be home. It's a little bit closer to like a 9 to 5 situation. So you can, you can still have, I mean, it's harder for women in the film business because usually with men that work in the film business, their wives are at home, or their partner is at home taking care of the children. Um, if it's women, that are working, if you don't have a partner at home raising your children, you're talking about daycare, you're talking about people that are watching your kids, and hopefully you have a parent or somebody that's close that can watch your children while you're at work. It's incredibly difficult to have children in this business. And I just kind of,
Yeah,
a family. I mean, it's
family,
Mike and
even a
I
family,
work really
right?
well together. We found each other when we were in our mid 30s. And there are times, though, that he and I will be with the film business. You can be on location for months at a time. So we've managed to figure out that, like we can go like about 3 weeks without seeing each other before we start becoming independent of each other. So we make an effort to either come back home for the weekend or I go out there or he goes out to see me. And we've managed to make that work. And that really works well. For some people, it doesn't work. Sometimes people bring their partner with them for the entire duration of the film. It's just, what works for each person. But you can definitely have a relationship.
Sure.
It's hard, but you have to really make it work. I know somebody that said like, oh, he's on location, I haven't seen him in 5 months. It's like, that's not happening. Like, that's just not going to work. Like, you have to make an effort to see the other person. And they're the most important and the most rewarding part of your life is your relationships outside of work. So that was, but I was really glad that I was there for my stepson. He's 29 now and he's the most lovely guy. And he has good memories of growing up with having his parents around. So I feel fortunate that I was able to make that commitment. Yeah. A lot of people, a
worth
lot
the
of people were
sacrifice,
doing
right?
bigger films and bigger projects at the time. And I kind of felt, a little bit left out. But I was able to kind of go and do things in between seasons, make the commitment to go do things during that time, which it was wonderful to do other projects. So, but I spent a lot of time, I was in town a lot, and then I was able to go on location later on. So that was good too. And locations it's hard to be away from home. So
Sure.
it's the best of both worlds being at home.
So last question, what would you say to keep them inspired and pursuing their
Right. I think, let's see. Well, I think part of it is that I get emails from people all the time, or I get direct messages on Instagram all the time of, I think I want to be a makeup artist. That's at that level. When you're saying, I think I want to be a makeup artist, you don't really want to be a makeup artist, because if you aren't already sending me pictures of stuff that you've worked on, if you're not already telling me the projects that you've been part of or that you're working in if you're younger, you've like, I'm doing all the makeup in my theater production at my high school. If you're not already telling me all the stuff that you've been doing since you were a little kid, or since you've discovered makeup, but you haven't read the books, you haven't learned the history, you don't know who your mentors are, you don't know who came before you. If you don't know any of that, you're not going to be successful. It's just not going to happen. You need to be diversified. You need to have a plan. You need to be, if you want to go to makeup school, you need to make the effort to look into all that stuff. There's literally when people say the world is your oyster right now, there is so much information, so many classes, so much out there on Instagram, on the internet, on, I don't really go on Facebook anymore, but there's stuff on Facebook, but on Instagram, there's so many live classes that are going on every single day that you can learn from. And this needs to be your passion, because there's going to be times that you are not going to love it. And it's going to be, this business will be mean to you. This business will make you discouraged. And if you don't have a seething passion for it, it's not going to sustain you. So if you feel that it's not your number one, have it as your hobby. Like, do hobby stuff. Like, maybe you're a cosplayer, or maybe you're doing makeups just for fun and you're putting, your demos online. Like, that's great too. Like, but maybe that's not it's not your dying passion, and that's okay. But find what is your passion. Maybe it's being a landscape designer, or maybe it's an architect, or maybe you want to be a nurse, but maybe you want to be a doctor or a lawyer. But if you want to still do makeup, like, do it on the side.
I love that because you're absolutely right that you have to want it so bad that in any circumstance you're still going to pursue it. Otherwise, you aren't going to make it. And I think that's great to just give them permission to say, you know what, you can love it, but not want to make a full-on career of it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
I love that.
There's a lot of opportunities for people to, um, I know people that, a couple people that I'd worked with years ago that ended up choosing family over working in the film business. And, I think it's incredibly commendable. I still see them at Monsterpalooza. We didn't have Monsterpalooza this year, but hopefully next year. Um,
Yes.
but I see them every year at Monsterpalooza. They bring their children. Their kids are really passionate about monsters, and they still are involved in the business. They still are involved in the world of horror, but they've chosen family over that, and that's amazing. It's just it's not necessarily know your limitations, but it is definitely um, you know your passion.
Yeah, your personal life has to align with your professional. And if they don't
Exactly.
align, yeah. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I've probably overextended my welcome because you had so much great
Not at
things to
all.
say. Eryn, we wish you the best of luck in whatever the future holds. We'll be following you. Absolutely. We recommend, following you you're on Instagram. So I
Hmm.
would advise our listeners to find your work because it is amazing. You have really inspirational posts. So thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Eryn. Have a wonderful day, and we will definitely connect soon.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.